Hello and welcome to another episode of Tales from a Professional Nerd. My name is Bryan Steele and I will be your nerd today and any other day that you watch one of my silly little shows. It's about ready to be a crazy couple of weeks. As far as the week in Bryan goes, pretty normal week. Nothing crazy, nothing super, out of sorts. Um, did some good planning for Warzone Eternal stuff. Working hard on a Power Rangers book, and getting ready for a vacation and Gen Con back to back. Not a lot going on as far as anything out of the ordinary. I've been doing a lot of de-stress painting. I actually just painted an absolute pile of kobolds for reasons. The gaming news of this week, played with my new character in the Curse of Strahd game last night. I'm playing an elven Psy Knight of the Order of the Sapphire Dragon. I don't think. I mentioned that I think that our campaign's basically at the end. We're at the boss fight, so this character is mostly just going to be there to help fight. I'm not getting too deep into his psyche and role playing background. I've got some bullet points. But I will say this: the introduction of myself and another character that replacing dead guys last night was probably some of the best roleplay we've done in a while. Between the characters and such, there was a lot of discussion about loss and should they go on, and do we want to even go back at Strahd? He's won. He's the despair of Ravenloft had really set in. It was neat. It was very cool. I hope that the other players enjoyed it as much as I did. But the end of the day, we ended up heading back to Strahd's castle and start heading into the fight. Had to fight some little thrally vampires, sadly. I think our next session in a couple of weeks is going to be probably. It's gonna be the Strahd fight take 2. But I get the impression that this is gonna be the end one way or the other. Unlike last time where we, some of the party escaped so we could take a second crack at it. I think that this time it's gonna be either we go down or he does. Just for the sheer fact that the sound in everybody's voice was, this needs to be it. We need to be done. We need to deal with him. And if he schools us again when we're ready for him, maybe we deserve it. But on another note, my lovely wife, who I've mentioned before, fell in love with the Steamforged Games Epic Encounters boxes. I did an unboxing a few videos back. They're awesome little D&D starters. I think they're fantastic, great. And she fell in love with them and got it in her head. She was like, I am going to run a game. It's gonna happen. She took it upon herself to put together her own world. She made some really cool maps. Again, she's an artist, so her maps are awesome. She has built up her first story, and she invited a handful of us. Currently, both kids are playing, myself and 2 of our friends, one who's never played a role-playing game before in her life, and the other one who really has only played on video game role-playing games. So it's gonna be a lot of fun. I'm hoping that it's not too much stress for Natalie, that she can that she'll be able to handle it. because she does get caught up in the minutia quite a bit. But I've been helping her trying to prep kind of the broad strokes and the broad ideas. Pointed out to her that there are several very cool videos on this very channel that are DM tips, and she laughed at me that she doesn't have time to watch my show. So, which is a whole other thing. But so she's ready to go, and then this weekend we have our fish, like our session 0 kind of. It's more like a session 0.5. Our son can't be there. He's got a party at his mom's house that he has to be at. But we are doing kind of a who meets who sort of thing. Gonna be a lot of fun. I'm really excited. I think it's gonna be. I am hoping that everybody goes to this with the mentality of a good game and just kind of having fun and laid back and doesn't make this real heavy. But our party is eclectic. Let's just say we're eclectic. So I am playing a Duergar Cleric of the Forge. We have the video game role player is playing a Loxodon Barbarian. The brand new to ever role-playing games ever, who's really kind of getting into it, which I think is so. I love seeing new players when like it stops being childish make-believe in their brain and starts being, hey, this is actually something that's fun and interesting. I love that, and I'm seeing that in Jackie Sparks. She is playing a sea elf sorceress, a very like ambitious first character. I applaud her for jumping in with both feet. It's a lot of times you go with the easy, rogue, fighter, maybe cleric, as kind of your opening salvo, and she's going straight to sorcerer, like thunderous origins. Yeah, it's gonna be great. Sorcerer of the Storm, I think it's called. My son is playing a changeling bard. I think he is eventually going to turn it into kind of a con artist bard when he gets a little further down the road. But I don't know. He's just really, when I started asking him about what the character looks like, and obviously that's for a changeling, it's anything, but like kind of primarily like what's the character about, and he really focused on the fact that he can play like 8 instruments, and that when he's playing, people love him, and so I think he's really gonna play up the schmoozy bard, the bar crawling bard. I think it's going to be. We recently watched, not recently, but recently enough, watched that first season of Vox Machina, the cartoon, and the halfling bard cracked him up. So I think we might see a little bit of that kind of booze hound bard, but we'll see. Who knows? I mean, he is almost 14, so that is the prime age for wanting to play a lech. And then our last character is my other my stepkid, or other kid. They are playing a feral tiefling ranger, who is seemingly trying to have ventured out into the wilderness to sort of make up for their checkered past. So I think that'll be fun. I think it's a great group. We'll see how long it continues as is. But yeah, weird group of people venturing out into the universe, and we'll see. I'll let you know how it goes. Like I said, our first session this weekend is kind of a half session. It's not a real deep session. So you'll probably get you'll probably get the lowdown on the real session down the way. What else? What else? This Friday I have, so I guess tonight for you guys, I've got my very sporadic game where I play the bar brawling halfling. I'm expecting that to be a lot of fun. Haven't played in a long time. I think last time we played, we were in the middle of kind of like a city, not a heist, but like a high tension city scene where like everybody and their brother was, trying to kill the NPC we're protecting, and you know how it goes. But that's it. Gaming wise, played a lot of Sea of Thieves because I was trying to finish out this season at 100 levels, which I did, or 100 renown. So then I think next week. Well, next time that my Xbox buddies and I get together, we'll probably go back to playing Tiny Tina's, because we never managed to finish that, and it's a really cool game. Yeah, that's pretty much it. Week in Bryan. I mean, I would love to be like, ooh, it's so deep, but it's just so much. It's just basically work, a little bit of gaming, and some prep for the upcoming stuff. That's about it. I did receive something in the mail that I can't show you yet because it needs some work before I can really reveal it. But when I reveal it, it's pretty rad. I actually kind of had forgotten that I bought it a long time ago, and so when the box showed up, I was like, "Ooh, cool!" So previews and hints, that'll be cool. All right, so let's get into it. To quote Darkwing Duck, let's get dangerous. So you clicked on the thumbnail. You know what this is. It is. I've done DM tips before for D&D or for running games. Let's do GM tips, Game Master tips. To avoid copyright issues. For Essence20 players, basically, now that Power Rangers has been out for a while, G.I. Joe has been out for a few months. People are still, getting hold of their books, and Transformers is right around the corner. They just actually, Renegade just sent out the email to all of the pre-orders that said, "Hey, you're getting your PDF copy in August." That means the physical copy is shortly on the way after. We're going to start seeing a lot more Essence20 games pop up, probably a lot more crossover games. But overall, there's already been, between Feats and Fables, Day of Destiny, what was it? Operation Shadow Coil, I think, was the G.I. Joe one. And there's a whole bunch of audio streams and YouTube shows and Twitch shows where people are playing E20 games. It's starting to really gain in popularity, and A, that warms my heart, and B, it's really kind of cool to get to see people really enjoying these games. In fact, one of my happy Discord Rangers, the people who are always online when I do my Discord office hours Monday through Friday for Renegade, he just officially started his Power Rangers game, and I actually got to watch 70% of the first episode. It's pretty cool. I've got to say, I'm very happy with how imaginative people are. I love seeing the new characters. I love seeing concepts that people are spawning out of the Power Rangers world. Like I said, I love it. I'm having a lot of fun being a fly on the wall, and I was actually able to even be helpful in that Twitch stream. There was a rules issue that popped up that I was like, oh hey, I'll help. Obviously, I can't do that for everybody everywhere, but I like to do what I can. And it's what sort of spawned the concept for this video is that there are so many new GMs out there, or old game masters that are just now running E20, that they might be running into some walls and such. First things first, the Renegade Games Discord server. If you have any questions and the errata doesn't cover it or anything like that, please hop on the Discord server and look me up. I am there every day, Monday through Friday, sometimes on weekends, for at least an hour, just chatting, talking about the game, answering rules questions. This is literally part of my job, is to try and help the E20 community stay awesome. And so far, that has not been hard. The E20 players and the Discord Rangers and my Discordicons over in the Transformers channel. And I don't know what Ryan calls the G.I. Joe Discorders. Maybe Strike Team Discord. I don't know. But whatever the case may be. And I guess there's the Equestrian Discords, the Discord ponies. But I love the fact that sometimes I'll see a question, I'll go back and I'll like get tagged in something, and I'll go back and look at it, and it was several hours before, and the players have already stepped up, answered the question, given page responses, given snapshots of the book, or whatever. Sometimes they've just linked to something I've said. It's really, really cool. It's really rad. And for the most part, it's almost always welcome. It's not someone jumping on there and being like, "Ugh, I hate this system. I can't believe it's this way. Why do I have to fact this? Or why couldn't it be right the first time?" More often than not, it's someone asking a question, and then someone getting it answered. There might be a little debate. There might be hey, let's wait until Bryan hops on next. Let's check the errata. There's those sorts of things. But for the most part, it's just players helping out players, wanting to have better, smoother running games, and everybody having a good time. I can't ask for anything more than that. That's phenomenal. So yeah, basically, if you ever run into that sort of thing, if you run into an issue, hop over there first, check the errata, ask the various regulars and be like, hey, has this come up before? And if it hasn't, or it's not on the errata or the FAQ or anything like that, then I will be on. Ryan Costello will be on. Ben Heisler will be on. We do our best to be on there as often as possible. And if you tag us, we will definitely rise to the occasion and go, oh hey, let's look at this. And I will be completely fair. There are times where something will get asked, and I might not have an answer. It might just be because there is a mistake, or it might be, hey, we're discussing this right now. We'll get to it when we can. Or it might be something that was like, hey, this is being looked at. Official answer forthcoming, and then the fact gets updated. So yeah, it's just good stuff all around. But let's get into it. You and me, you the collective you. So I put together kind of 10 tips that I think are important for an Essence20 GM to understand and potentially utilize as they either plan or begin to play their games. This, of course, is not in any particular order. The number one is still the number one, but for the rest of everything else, it's just kind of, these are just sort of ideas that came out to me. I probably could go on for hours and hours and hours. Nobody has that kind of time. So I jotted down, I thought was probably the 10 most important. Let's start with making sure that you have a session 0. This is kind of a role-playing game. A relatively, a lot of role players were already doing this. They just didn't know how to name. But this is basically the planning session. This is the game that happens before the game, where most of the time you're spent out of character. Most of the time it's about planning, building the characters, understanding the plot, understanding anything about the system. It's almost like a training session for the game. This is also where players and GMs can discuss what's cool at the table. There's different names for it, role-playing consent forms, veils and triggers. There's all kinds of your hard X cards. There's all kinds of terms for it, but at the end of the day, you don't need to have a term for everything. What it is we want everybody to be having fun at the table and not do things willfully that are going to take that fun away. And whether or not that is doing something that is going to bother somebody, something that is intrinsically, they really just have a hard time even hearing about that sort of thing. Or maybe it's somebody who's gone through something recently and this is their escape and they just don't want to know about it. They just don't want to talk about that sort of thing because they've been through something gnarly. Whatever the case may be, and whatever the reasons, whatever the terms you choose to use, Session 0 is important to get that stuff out, to lay a good groundwork, and especially if you are playing with strangers, like at a game store, or like you put a thing on the game, the hobby club board that says I'm starting a game, come play with me, or it's you found somebody on Facebook that wants to play and you've added them to your game. It's a very good way to protect yourself from being in a situation that you find, untenable or uncomfortable. I know personally, I don't have very many veils and lines that get crossed. I don't have very many situations that make me go, I don't like role-playing aspects of reality that include family and friends, or pets, like where you actually have, we're playing in the real world and let's make ourselves as characters. I've never liked that. I have absolutely never liked that. I have a hard enough time staying out of my head concerning myself and potentially disastrous things with my children and my pets and my family and friends as it is. Being put in a situation where the dice are dictating that, or worse yet, someone who I view as a friend is dictating these situations, it's never been good for me, mentally or otherwise. So I just know that when someone says, like for instance, several years ago, a friend of mine says, "Hey, I'm going to run an all flesh must be eaten game, zombie role playing game," and they're going to set it in our hometown, and they are going to have us build ourselves. And this was before I realized I didn't like this setup, because in the very first session, there was an instance that was your family pet has contracted the nasty vampire virus. What do you do? And it hit me so hard that, having to put down my dog, or fight my dog, or see my dog hurt someone, I was like, yeah, this isn't for me. I can't do it. So that's something that should have come out in a Session 0 if I would have had that knowledge. But also Session 0s are important because it allows your characters to create connections with each other. There's not that awkward Session 1, who are you, what are you, how do we know each other, we all meet up in a bar. That stuff, it's not necessary. If you've built a background for these characters. Now, with a lot of Essence20 games, the protagonists, the player characters, are part of a team. They're part of a faction. They're part of, they should know one another. And depending on what level you're starting them at, depending on their backgrounds, depending on what you're doing with this game, they might have known each other for a long time. Hell, even in the Power Rangers TV show, all of the characters knew each other as people for years before they ever were discovered by Zordon and given the powers of a Power Ranger. So that built up some history, that built up some background, that built up some cool stuff that they can do with one another and refer to one another. And that's what a Session Zero is all about. It's not the kind of thing that you want to see as an actual like plot point arc is building during the adventure. You want that stuff to start, and then you build on it from there. You don't want to just appear, oh, hey, in the middle of the fight, remember that time that you stole Uncle David's car? What? You know, it'll seem forced, it'll seem awkward, and it very well might break any kind of mood or narrative flow that you have going on if suddenly someone's like, oh, let's jam in some history and have people start asking questions about it. So yeah, Session Zero. I also think that Session Zero is very important in an Essence20 game because character options, currently, with only the core rulebooks being what's out, character options are based off of this whole fashion plate system where you've got the origin, the influence, and the role, and you can mix and match them however you want. It would be, depending on the group, depending on the situation, it might be something where someone goes, I really do want to play this particular type of character, and then as luck or misfortune might have it, one of the other players makes the same set of origin, role, influence. They could still be drastically different characters, but when it comes to the abilities and the skills and the influences, like the perks that they get and the hang-ups that come from the extra influences, that could be problematic because it could either be leaving a hole in your team of not being able to do something, or it could make it so someone can do something where your team does something too well. You make an entire team of nothing but, you know, super combat monsters, and your game master now suddenly either has to amp up all the threat levels because to deal with this, or you guys just kind of walk through everything, and that's not okay either. So Session Zero, super important. Number 9, I'm going to say this is probably one of the more important rules, and this is be flexible. Essence20 was designed, we designed this system to be a kind of, you know, we didn't want every single thing to have a role, every single thing to have a save, single thing to have, you know, use this skill versus this skill at this difficulty every single time. The whole point of Essence20, why there's so few skills, why there's only 4 primary Essence abilities, it's because we wanted to be able to build that narrative. We wanted the players and the GMs to work together. Yes, there is a status quo. If I am punching you with all of my might, which is a skill, to try and hit you in the chops, and you decide to dodge it out of the way with an evasion, that's there you go. Dodging with evasion, punching with might. That's kind of the basics. But let's say that I am a robot. And I am making that punch at someone, and the person I'm punching is, we'll set the stage, I'm in some kind of mechanical workshop. And the person I'm punching is a smart guy. He's got a very high willpower defense because he's got a lot of points in smarts, and it's way higher than his evasion or his toughness. And he goes, you know, rather than trying to take it on the chin or dodge out of the way, he looks at his GM and says, hey, I'm in this workshop. Could there possibly be, you know, a electromagnetic coil or something nearby? Can I use my smarts-based defense by knowing that if I lean in toward the magnetic coil, this robot's hand is going to get dragged over there instead of hitting me? That's the kind of thing that Essence20 really is capable of, is because in that instance, I would look at that player and go, yeah, I think that's cool. That's a great idea. He's using his smarts to outwit this punching robot. You know, and that's just, it also goes with skill roles. let's say that a lot of people use acrobatics and athletics kind of interchangeably. They're not quite interchangeable, but they're two of the easiest ones to pass back and forth with each other based off of whether or not you're just pushing your body to the limits or if you're trying to parkour your way across across a park. It is you hell you could let's say we're back in that foundry, we're back in that giant mechanical industrial workshop, and it's one of those scenes that make no sense in sci-fi movies where there's chompers and squishers and flaming things, and there's like this conveyor belt, this mechanism that's full of destruction. And as a GM, I look at the players and go, hey, acrobatics test difficulty 18 to cross unharmed. And the smart guy, again, goes, hey, can I watch the mechanisms and kind of figure out the algorithm using my science mathematics? And he makes the roll, wins the roll, and so it's rather than, cinematically, what we're seeing, we see, some of these characters jumping and convorting and dodging and rolling, and my phone is going off. Sorry. And jumping and playing and all that stuff going on. Then there's this one character, this one individual who goes, he just stands on the conveyor belt and counts at 1, 2, 3, and he takes a step forward, 4, 5 steps forward. Like he's got it timed perfectly in his head that it's not about a matter of dodging, it's just knowing when these things are going to slam shut, burn, or whatever. And everyone else is at the end of the conveyor belt, out of breath, and then the smart guy just steps off like he's on one of the people movers at the airport. Like, all right, let's go. That's the kind of stuff that we want to see. That sort of flexibility is if a player comes up with something that makes sense. Now, obviously, if a player comes up with something that doesn't make sense, then don't let them do it. That same situation with the conveyor belt full of chompers and slammers, one of the guy goes, I'm going to try and intimidate the machine. You look at them and go, okay, you flex impressively, you yell at that machine, you snarl at it, and then you step on the conveyor belt and the chomper smashes your toes. Come on. But again, flexible doesn't mean that you have to be a Santa Claus. It just means you have to be willing to listen to your players, willing to figure out the best way to make it work for the story, for the plot to continue. Because that is the whole point of the Essence20 system, is for the adventure to start and eventually finish and have all this cool stuff happen in between. That's the goal. Rule number 8. The Essence20 system has a lot of moving parts that you can access, and it can get a little crazy. I suggest, specifically looking at the weapons section for upgrades, I suggest you read that section very thoroughly, you check the FAQ, you read that section on the FAQ very thoroughly, you pop over to the Discord, you ask people about what they've dealt with when it comes to upgrades, because adding upgrades to your character's weapons can make them ridiculously powerful. Yeah, they've got to make rolls to acquire them, and yeah, they technically would have to have time for this stuff to happen. And there's a lot of things that could mitigate it, but for the most part, it is very easy to make very, very powerful pieces of equipment, even at lower levels. So you need to make sure that you watch it. You watch your players, that they're not making these doomsday devices with just a couple of die rolls. But you also want them, again, going back to flexibility, you make sure your players have access to the things that can make their weapons unique to themselves. So they're not just using the same old thing that everybody else is using. But I would just say make sure you keep an eye on it. Anything, and I mean anything that does a base of 3 or more damage pretty regularly. 2 is a lot. 3 or more as a base, you've probably run into a situation where that item is going to be very problematic, because they are going to be one-shotting most minions, and depending on the circumstance, they're going to tear through even your big guys pretty fast. We'll get into damage a little bit later, but 3 or more is a lot in this game. Number 7, YTYC, your table, your call. There is a lot of stuff that is GM's discretion in a role-playing game. And Essence20 leans into that insofar that there are a lot of things that we based off of the canon from the show or the comics. We based it off of scenes that happened or things that we've read, and then tried to codify it with rules. What that means is that sometimes there might be stuff that just isn't you look at it and go, this isn't as good as the other. It's because it was based in cinemas or in cinematics, or it is something that we want to give the option. If you're playing a high-level campaign, maybe use the other one. If you're playing more of a low, gritty, level campaign, use the first. It is totally up to you. But I know every role-playing game says, the GM has the final say over anything. All of these rules can be changed and whatever. That's absolutely true. But I prefer YTYC because that doesn't mean change the rule. It means do what you need to do at your table while you're playing to maintain the fun of the game. Rather than trying to redesign the system, rather than trying to home rule everything and make this binder full of caveats that new players are just never going to understand, you just make rulings at the table and then you go with it. If you make it work, you make it feel right, and you keep going with how that goes from there. You don't try and, well, this doesn't work, but I've never, there's nothing that bothers me more than when someone says, well, these rules don't feel right. These rules are terrible. These rules don't work. And then you ask, okay, well, how many times have you played them? And they go, well, I've never actually played. That's all just armchair development, and that does nobody any good. You have to be able to play it. You've got to have players and GMs, not even just a single, I could sit there and roll dice all day and go, this system works. But as soon as I give it to players and they try and use it in a different way, or they try and use it in an actual narrative sense, and they have a blast with it, then it succeeded. It did what it was supposed to do. It furthered the game. People are having fun. YTYC. Number 6, damage values. Damage values in Essence20 are low. Period. Most things do 1 damage. I would say 75% of the attacks in the game do 1 damage. And that is because health values are also low. This is a cinematic game. Most of the time, you'll have something, like when you watch these shows, you watch a TV show, you watch the cartoon or whatever, something might get hit 2 or 3 times, and then they're knocked out. They're defeated. And that either meant having an astronomically high damage values on everything to deal with the fact that, these big characters have 1 million, health points or whatever, or it meant us creating a figurative health system that is much lower, but then easy to calculate as far as how much damage things do. And that's, if I succeed, it does its base. If I get additional degrees of success, I can add alternate effects or the base damage. If I get a critical success, I get to basically double that base damage or add one of the alternate effects. Easy as that. And so what that can do is that it does mean that you can get, somebody who, with the right the right perks and this and that. I've heard people talking about how they go, well, my Red Ranger can do 5 damage, twice a round at level 6 or whatever. And if that's cool at your table, if that's fun, then do it. Rock and roll. If the rest of your party basically is, if the rest of your team is just standing there being like, Red Ranger, do your thing, and they're not having any fun, that's where the system is failing you. And it's that one particular player has created a character who is stealing the show, who is stealing the limelight, who has done everything he can to make that character into a damage dealing monster. So now what you need to do is either find a way to take that limelight away from them and shine it on the others for a little while, get everybody's morale and spirits back up, or you need to put that character in their place and let them realize that, yes, they made a very scary character, they made a very powerful person, but that they aren't untouchable, and maybe put them in a situation where combat isn't the only solution. Put them in a mental puzzle. Make a bad guy who is dealing with things like in the public image. Make a governmental plot like in a G.I. Joe game or something. Something that they can't just shoot, slash, or kick their way out of. And then now suddenly everybody else on that team, it's not about making that Red Ranger or that OP character feel bad. It's about making everyone else, about lifting everyone else up in their utility so they feel just as useful on the team as everybody else. Number 5, cinematic versus hard crunch. So I talked about this a little bit earlier. This game was designed with creating cartoons and comic book scenes and like movie scenes and TV scenes at the role-playing level. And what that means is sometimes you have to, sometimes you got to squint and you got to realize that, every Cobra agent has a parachute and jumps out of their trouble bubble when it gets blasted. Sometimes sometimes having the right tool at the right time is just necessary rather than sitting there for 30 minutes being stumped as to how to get past an obstacle. And occasionally, the bad guy teleports in and challenges you to a straight-up fight because you're taking too long. These are tools you can do because it's tools that it's things we've seen and that we watched and that we accepted as children, and possibly later in life we accepted these as just this happens in these universes. Magic is a thing sometimes. Nanotech is a thing. Cobra Law and their biotechnology exists. That's stuff that you have to kind of take that back step to and go, all right, this is just part of the game. And cinematically, if it makes the scene cool and if it makes everybody collectively have more fun, then that is, in my opinion, that's better than having a rule for everything, defining every single instance, or being like, it is this way and it's never any other way. Number 4. Speaking of trouble bubbles and parachutes, the awesomeness of the defeated condition. So the defeated condition, you'll note that we don't have dead in our games in Essence20. Essence20 does not have dead. It has defeated. When your health reaches 0, or if something else is triggered to create the defeated stat, something happens. Your GM states that most of the time. In the case of Power Rangers, if you are morphed, it says when you're defeated, you can choose to get knocked out of your morphin shell and returned to your normal form with 1 health and unconscious. That's awesome, because that means you're still there, you're still part of the scene. Someone could maybe come over and help you, someone could maybe shake you awake, someone could rescue you, but it also keeps that feel of a Saturday morning cartoon kind of thing, where we see these protagonists get blasted, blown up, dropped out of planes, whatever, and they are always, they're rough and tumble. They might need some bed rest, but they're always going to be okay. They're always going to be back unless it is a major epic moment in the story. And if it's something like that, then that's something you've worked out with your GM. Your GM has discussed this with you, or maybe has warned everyone ahead of time. Like during that whole session 0 thing, he says, "Hey, this game's going to be brutal. I'm not, we're not red and blue lasers today. We're bullets. This is G.I. Joe firing bullets. You are real soldiers in a real counter-terrorist group, and we're going to run it gritty." As long as everybody's on board with that, and they know, that's fine. Just kind of refer back to the whole low damage value thing. It's real possible for someone to get knocked out in a single hit. And if your defeated is dead, your game's going to be pretty bloody, I would say. So that's one of the things to keep in mind. But also, defeated can also be an awesome narrative. When the bad guys get defeated, sometimes rubber suit monsters, they explode. Sometimes it could be, oh, I'm defeated, so I give this piece of information to the players, and then get teleported away. Or while I'm escaping, my defeated condition is I immediately escape the scene. I run away. I try to get to the teleporter, but I drop, the MacGuffin. I drop the book that has all the secrets, or whatever. That could be part of their defeated condition. And as a GM, you can create whatever you want to be the defeated condition. You can also create anything that potentially defeats someone early. You could say in this scene, this guy with 10 health, if he ever gets to 5, he suddenly realizes, oh my god, they might be able to kill me, and he is defeated at 5 health instead of 0. This is a way for players to use game masters to use some of those canonized characters of much higher power in ways that hopefully will not just immediately break their game and defeat all of their protagonists. That's what it's all about. You can also use defeated as a way to further a story, in the way that, like, when this character, with the team, the entire team is defeated, and they wake up in the next session or the next scene, they wake up in the Cobra prison, and now suddenly you got a prison break situation. There's ways that you can absolutely turn a negative. You can really have the team fail forward plotline wise using the defeated state. Number 3, we built Essence20. It's all about compatibility. We built Essence20 to be compatible with each other. You can absolutely have cooperative play. You can absolutely have characters from different lands functioning with one another about as seamlessly as we could create it. There is just one caveat. This is the GM tip: is when doing crossover play, remember where and what you're crossing over. Remember what you're bringing in. G.I. Joe characters will have a ton of gear. They will be potentially pretty good at dishing out damage at range, and pretty steadily for the most part. But something like a Power Ranger, depending on what level you're playing, they've got access to a war machine that they can just call. An actual, like, monstrous death machine, or a time-traveling spaceship. They have access to some literal high, crazy kaiju stuff. And eventually when Transformers comes out, you're crossing over with things that are potentially, 20 feet tall, 25 feet tall, maybe larger when you get into some of the other source books down the road. And so now you've got your adventure. So there is a great scene. I know a lot of people don't like it. I actually love the first Michael Bay Transformers movie. There is a scene where all of the Autobots are standing around in the Witwicky backyard, and Optimus is talking to Sam through the window. And that is one of my number one go-tos when someone says, how well do Transformers and Power Rangers or G.I. Joe cross over? Because you have to remember the size differences, on average, most Transformers in their bot form are like 12 to 15 feet tall. Okay. But there are, the monolith, the monolith can be 30, I think. That's really big. And so, unlike, there's that old throwback to, like, D&D dungeon crawls, where someone's like, well, I wanted to play, there's a reason why all 5e D&D player character races are now medium, why they've adjusted the size category for medium. Even centaurs are medium, because being large in D&D was a huge benefit, but also narratively made almost no sense. If you were there were published adventures where if you were a large character, you simply could not go into that part of the adventure, because the raft to get you there couldn't carry your weight. The rope was too thin. Like, as it was written, it just wasn't possible. Now, obviously, you can change that. You can alter it. But as it was written, it just really wasn't capable of doing so. This is the same concept of when you start crossing over Transformers into the other genres, or with the other genres, is they are going to run into situations where they are too big for the scene. Especially like a published adventure map, like a G.I. Joe map might have a 25 by 25 foot room where you have a fist fight in. If you put a Transformer, if you put a Cybertronian in the middle of that room, he's taking up most of the room. And that's a problem. Your tactical flexibility goes down to nothing. And yeah, you've got some comic relief of, big guy in a little coat situation. But it doesn't help you when it comes to gameplay. So that is one thing you have to remember when you're dealing with the crossing over of these lines. You got to keep in mind the little things about these licenses. Eventually when My Little Pony comes out, My Little Pony is probably going to have a hard time fitting in the middle of a Cybertronian firefight. That license doesn't lean that way. Conversely, My Little Pony having to use some of their cool friendshipness to try and solve, Lord Zed trying to take over the California coast, they're not really going to get to Care Bear stare him real long before he summons a giant monster, and then we're dealing with weirdness. So, again, yes, E20 is designed for everybody to play nice and play well with one another, and they do. However, some of the backbones of these licenses and some of the IPs themselves, you may need to make some planning and some adjustment to make sure that they are able to play nice. Number 2. This is a huge thing for GMs in Essence20 to understand, and that is the application of snags, edge, and dice shifts. So, snag should be something that has nothing to... applying a snag should have nothing to do with your skill level or the complexity of what you're doing, and everything to do with a blanket situation. That for anyone trying this, there should be a snag. Unless, of course, you have something special that specifically says, hey, you got a snag. And the same thing goes with edge. Edge should be a blanket sort of... In this instance, no matter who you were, you would have edge because of, higher ground, or because of, the target being stunned, or whatever. Dice shifting should be a little more situational, a little more wiggly. The biggest thing you get dice shifts from, obviously, is like size, is the difference between size categories, aiming, and then a lot of perks and powers and stuff give you some dice shifting. And then once all of your dice shifting's figured out where you're at, then you roll your stuff. GMs, you should not be stingy with the dice shifting. If you think that it's an easy task, set the difficulty really low. But if you think that it's a hard task, but they've got the right kind of tools, the right kind of time, or maybe a friend that can show them how to do something, or maybe they got a clue or whatever, then give them dice shifts. The opposite is also true. If the situation, the whatever they're trying to do is not that hard, keep the difficulty low. But then if there's a bunch of other stuff getting in their way, it's really hard to mop a floor if you're wearing slippery sandals or slippery socks on a waxed floor. Or you might be the best mechanic in the world, but if I give you a rusted out jalopy to fix, you will likely have a harder time fixing that. So the process might be simple. The concept is easy. I get in there, I take off a couple of bolts, I throw a couple of bolts on there. Fine. I get under there and go, okay, half the bolts are missing. There's a weld over here. And so rather than increasing the difficulty on the process, I go, it just makes it harder for you to apply your skill. So you downshift down. So it is, don't think that the only place that you can get edge, snag, or dice shifts are rules-based stuff. It can be absolutely situational. It can be something that you choose to do. This is also a good way for you to circumvent what you might believe is a lacking in the rules. Like, let's say that someone does not think that everybody in this team should all be you guys all grew up as expert drivers, so you guys should all have bonuses to your drive. Rather than giving them bonus points, you could say in any sort of situation where you're on a racetrack, all of your skills are up one when it comes to driving because you're expert drivers. Or there are perks in the book. There are some perks. I mentioned earlier that there are some perks that just seem like you look at it and go, this isn't as good as the other version. Like, why am I not? We wanted to give variety out there. We wanted to give you lots of people options, but also, and you'll see this when you get into some of the larger printed adventures, there are instances where the reward for the narrative is a perk. And sometimes those perks that we're giving out, or you might choose to give out in a certain circumstance, it might, rather than giving them the full strength version, you give them the weaker one. It's free, but they're still getting something cool. That's something that I think that GMs also need to remember is, with the exception of the essence points equaling how much stuff you have in your skills, everything else is real flexible, and you can totally give free stuff to your characters. Help them out. I believe it's the I've got it right here. I had it. Grid champion. As a Power Ranger character, that's a thing that you get for when you've beaten one of Rita's big monsters, and so now you are more adept at dealing with all the little scumbags that get in the way of you fighting big monsters. A lot of times, especially if your game is going to take you away from that kind of fight, and you might never see those minions again, that might seem like kind of a waste. Or it could be an awesome reward for your entire team the first time that they beat an entire story arc that ends with like a big monster. There you go. Number 1, and I've said this before, Essence20. I'm paraphrasing actually one of the Discord Rangers. They gave me this line and I love it. Essence20 is not a toolbox. It's a toy box. You open it up, there's all kinds of cool stuff inside, and you get to play games. That is what our concept is here. Is we give you all the different bits and bobs, and when you get down to the bottom of the toolbox, there's all that There, the bottom of the toy box, there's all those scattered weapons and accessories from your action figures, and you go, huh, and you start putting them on different people. I can't tell you how many times, Splinters from Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, Splinter's cape ended up on He-Man because it looked cool. That's what I'm saying, is that's what this is about, is mixing and matching and making it happen, because we want you guys to have fun with this system. We want you to walk away from the table every time going, I love it. Maybe you have a sad moment. Someone gets defeated. A bad guy reveals his master plan. A bad guy wins. You could have a down moment, but as long as you're having fun on the way to that down moment, I still consider it a success. That is my rule number one when it comes to Essence20, is don't get caught up in the minutia. Don't get caught up in, am I doing this right? Look at your players. Are they smiling? Are they asking when the next session's going to be? Are they sending you personal messages on Facebook between sessions going, I totally know what I want to do when I level up? Because they're thinking about it. They're listening. They're part of it. They're having fun. And that's the goal. That's the point. So that's my rule number one. And with that, I hope you had a good time. I hope any of this made any kind of sense. I plan on posting this up in a couple of different places. Hopefully it'll be useful. Who knows? Like, share, comment, subscribe. You know how that goes. Hit all those crazy buttons. Be part of the July comment raffle by commenting on any of the July videos. Ask the people before the comment raffle. You get a chance to get some pretty cool stuff. So let's just say I want everybody, especially going forward here real soon. We've got some conventions coming up. Got some group stuff. San Diego Comic-Con is this week. So please be safe. Wear a mask in these big groups. Get your boosters. Be safe. Have fun. And play some games. See you in a week.